Welcome to Chasing Baseball's Immortals, where I explore the career of every 20th century Hall of Famer while collecting one of their original Playing Days cards. Today I'm taking a closer look at Johnny Evers and his 1909 Philadelphia Caramel E95 issue. We'll trace his role in the early Cubs dynasty, his defensive brilliance, and why the E95 is a clean collectible entry into pre-war collecting. Let's get started. Johnny Evers was born July 21, 1881 in Troy, New York, a tough industrial city where baseball thrived on local sandlots and factory teams. Quick, wiry, and fiercely competitive, Evers rose from semi-pro ball to the majors in 1902, when the Chicago Cubs purchased his contract from the Troy Trojans. Within a year, he became the club's starting second baseman, forming the iconic Tinker to Evers to Chance infield that anchored one of the greatest dynasties of the Deadball era. Evers was known for his sharp baseball intelligence, a master of positioning, base running, and the fine details of the rulebook. His quick hands and exceptional range made him one of the premier defensive second basemen of his time, and his intensity often set the tone for the Cubs' aggressive style of play. He helped lead Chicago to 4 pennants and back-to-back World Series championships in 1907 and 1908. After leaving the Cubs, Evers became the strategic heartbeat of the 1914 Miracle Braves, guiding Boston from last place in midsummer to a stunning World Series sweep. His leadership and steady play earned him the Chalmers Award, the era's equivalent of the MVP. Evers later managed, coached, and scouted, remaining a respected baseball mind long after his playing days. He was elected in the Hall of Fame in 1946 and is remembered as one of the smartest, toughest, and most influential middle fielders of the 20th century. Now we'll place Johnny Evers in context by comparing his career to a successor and a modern counterpart. Evers built his career on defense, intelligence, and situational precision. Playing in the Deadball era, he wasn't a power threat, but he controlled the infield, turned double plays with efficiency, and understood the rhythms of the game as well as any second baseman of his generation. His career WAR reflects that blend of defensive excellence, on-base ability, and the intangible impact of a player who elevated his team's run prevention. Evers wasn't a star in the traditional offensive sense. He was a catalyst, a player whose value came from positioning, anticipation, and the ability to influence the game's smallest margins. A generation later, Red Shingdings offers the closest historical match. Shingdings shared Evers' profile as a second baseman, defined by reliability, contact hitting, and defensive steadiness. Like Evers, he wasn't a slugger, but he contributed through consistency, range, and the ability to keep an infield operating smoothly. Their career WAR sets in the same neighborhood, and both players built Hall of Fame cases on longevity, defensive value, and the kind of quiet excellence that doesn't dominate headlines but wins games. Shingdings' era offered more offense, but the underlying skill set precision, dependability, and team-oriented play mirrors Evers' strengths. In the modern era, Willie Randolph provides the cleanest parallel to Evers' overall profile. Randolph combined elite on-base skills, above-average defense, and a cerebral approach to the position that made him one of the most valuable second basemen of the late 20th century. Like Evers, he wasn't defined by power. Instead, he excelled at controlling the strike zone, preventing runs, and anchoring the infield with consistency. Randolph's career WAR far surpasses Evers, but the shape and value, defense, discipline, and intelligent play align closely. Both players thrived by doing the subtle, little things well year after year. Across these 3 eras, Johnny Evers in the tactical, low-scoring Deadball era, Red Shingdings in the post-war National League, and Willie Randolph in the modern analytics-aware game, you can trace a lineage of second basemen defined by defensive value, baseball intelligence, and sustained, quietly influenced excellence. Each served as a stabilizing force in his infield, each contributed with precision more than power, and each set a standard for what a high-impact, fundamentally sound second baseman can be across changing eras of the sport. The 1909 E95 Philadelphia Caramel set is one of the most collector-friendly Deadball era releases. It's a tight 25-card checklist that blends star power, early caramel charm, and real historical accessibility. The cards were distributed regionally across the Northeast, slipped one at a time into small, penny-priced Philadelphia Caramel candies. Kids pulled them straight from the simple caramel wrappers. No multi-series rollout, no extended production window, just a single, straightforward 1909 issue. And because they were handled by children and stored loosely, most surviving examples show familiar caramel-era wear, rounded corners, creases, and staining. And while the headliners Ty Cobb, Honus Wagner, and Christy Mathewson command strong prices, the overall set remains slightly more attainable, largely because collector demand is concentrated elsewhere. The massive popularity of tobacco issues like the T206 draws much of the hobby's attention and budget, leaving the E95 as a historically rich but comparatively undervalued alternative. And in this episode, we highlight Johnny Evers. He captures this balance perfectly. His E95 card features one of the sharpest early portraits of the Cubs' brilliant second baseman, and yet it remains far more accessible than many of his scarcer Caramel and regional issues. The typical market for this card is for a PSA 4 around $1,400, PSA 3 around $1,000, and a PSA 2 around $400. Now we'll look at the card. Here's my 1909 Philadelphia Caramel E95 Johnny Evers. I got this a few months ago within the last year, paid a little over $400 on one of the online auction sites. It was either Heritage or REA, I cannot remember now. And this was the card that I was targeting for my 20th Century Hall of Fame run for Johnny Evers. And it's a similar portrait to his, or probably the exact same portrait to his T206, but the red background, which I actually prefer. This copy is well centered, does have some staining. You can see there on his jersey, slight rounded corners. The back, legible. Well, again, some more staining on the back, but overall, a nice back. This is a SGC 2.5. And so far, this is the first and only E95 that I have in my collection. I would like to add a couple more. But this completes my Johnny Evers run. Now let's check out a few of Johnny Evers' more interesting and collector-relevant cards. His Deadball era run includes some of the period's most distinctive designs, ornate photography, early lithography, and the bold red tones of pre-war Caramel issues. First, we have his 1909 Ramley. The Ramley is one of Evers' true premium cards. Its gold frame borders and soft photographic portrait give it a refined cabinet-style look. For collectors who appreciate early century elegance and real scarcity, this is the standout in his catalog. Next, we have his 1909 T206 portrait. Evers' T206 portrait is his most recognizable card, a crisp color lithograph that captures classic tobacco era aesthetic. It's far more accessible than his Ramley, with examples across a wider range of grades, making it an ideal entry point into both Evers' run and the broader T206 set. And then finally, we have the 1914 Crackerjack. The Crackerjack delivers the bold red background and unmistakable Caramel era style collectors love. Because these cards came directly in Caramel popcorn boxes, clean copies are tough, especially compared to the 1915 mail-in set. It's one of the most visually striking cards of his career and a centerpiece for pre-war collectors. Johnny Evers' run sets at the heart of the Deadball era, and what makes it appealing is how accessible it remains. Even his scarcer issues are far more affordable than those of the Inner Circle Hall of Famers. Together, these cards offer a blend of scarcity, history, and surprising affordability, a strong mix for both new collectors and seasoned pre-war enthusiasts. If you've made it this far, thanks for watching. On deck, I'll be taking a closer look at Mel Ott, a prodigious power hitter long before the home run era, a compact left-handed swing that reshaped what a modern slugger could be, and one of the most consistent offensive forces of the 30s and 40s. I'll also break down his 1933 Gowdy portrait, a bold, colorful, early gum era classic that introduced one of the game's great hitters to an entire generation of collectors. See you then.